Japanese video game development leads have a pretty interesting habit of becoming synonymous with the games they develop. Whether it's for their broad appeal, lasting impact on the industry, or simply for doing something different, it's not uncommon for the developer attached to a title to be a good indicator of what you should expect from their latest work. The name Suda51 immediately brings to mind thoughts of over-the-top style and highly introspective yet elusive themes from anyone who's familiar with his work. For years, his unique approach to storytelling has created captivating experiences that have justifiably built him a pretty significant cult following around the world. If you're a gamer, you'll likely recognize him as that one guy who develops incredibly stylish games with both a unique identity and presentation not quite like anything else out there. In thinking this, you really would not be wrong. Assessing his actual role in the games he's credited with, the most iconic titles are connected by a single thread: his writing. Suda51's approach to storytelling, from scenarios to themes, as well as characters and dialogue, feel quite unlike much else in the market. With such a legacy as a writer, one might be curious about how the legendary punk game designer and director would fare taking on a new medium in which to express himself. In the year 2006, Suda51 began working on the concept for a horror game titled Kurayami. After 2 years of searching, he managed to secure a publisher, Electronic Arts. In what could be considered the byproduct of corporate intervention and well-intended marketing practices, the project changed over time, and in 2011, Grasshopper Manufacture released Shadows of the Damned, published by EA. The game, met with reception ranging from lukewarm to positive, has a very notorious place among Suda51's works for not being quite what he intended it to be. As it turns out, the game's script was rewritten 5 times during development due to publisher feedback, and as it evolved, the original scenario was gradually buried beneath the shadows of this corporate meddling. Publisher EA found many of its themes and concepts too outlandish or simply unmarketable to a wide audience, and after so many revisions, it was clear that Shadows of the Damned and his original scenario, Kurayami, were simply two different things. Often, conflict and adversity lead to growth and creativity. In the case of Suda51, this silent war over the fate of his original scenario, Kurayami, came to a close through the advent of manga. I love this road. When I drive up that hill, it's like heaven's waiting for me on the other side. Beyond this deep green road, there's a brilliant blue sky, white clouds, and a shining, jet black box. Kurayami Dance is an original manga written by Suda51 and illustrated by Shuji Takeya, exploring themes of life and death, what it means to live, grief, acceptance, love, and camaraderie. The manga in its entirety numbers only 2 volumes in total, and brings with it an absolutely perfect art style for communicating and complementing the writing of Suda51. What makes Kurayami Dance special for fans of Suda's work is how it came to be. As the similar name implies, Kurayami Dance is an adaptation of sorts for the original Kurayami scenario that eventually was repurposed and reshaped into Shadows of the Damned. Without the limitations of a publisher breathing down his neck and total creative freedom to create a story he wanted to tell, the end result is something very special. Each character manages to feel distinct while also fulfilling their specific purposes within the story. Kurayami Dance was serialized in the seinen manga magazine Comic Beam, published by Enterbrain, which is in itself a fairly niche magazine to begin with, whose very small but loyal fan base primarily consists of hardcore manga enthusiasts and art students. Kurayami Dance is the story of Wataru Kamikaze Kaido, a man whose pursuit for something beyond his own perception led him to taking a life-changing trip on his motorcycle at 300 kilometers per hour. Following the aftermath of this life-changing decision, the world as he knows it has changed, and he finds himself existing somewhere between the world of the living and the world of the dead. While this concept does sound like your standard fare for a Suda51 trip, it plays out rather differently. The hero's journey brings him through a number of unusual locations, sharing meaningful interactions with characters and several opportunities for introspection. As always in a Suda51 narrative, the story is also thoroughly peppered with a very forthcoming abundance of death. Unlike many other Suda51 narratives, however, the story's protagonist treats life and death as things of reverence, particularly the value of the former. Perhaps the most significant aspect of Kurayami Dance is this very detail. Characters die over meaningless squabbles as a matter of course in your typical Suda51 work, but in Kurayami Dance, this wanton disregard for life is met with mindful opposition from protagonist Wataru. Perhaps most of the significance for this detail comes from its relationship with Suda51's own past. While the recurring narrative and thematic continuity of Kill the Past persists within most of Suda's work, there seems to be a contradiction in this particular piece. With Wataru's career as an undertaker, we get a glimpse into the past of Suda51 himself, who spent many years in this same profession as an undertaker before breaking into the game industry. With it, we receive an introspective look at how an undertaker might perceive death through the eyes of this protagonist and narrative. The end result is a very sobering and humane approach to the human experience, and why death is not to be taken lightly. Suda51's titles more often than not focus on the tales of assassins. They are explorations into the dark world of killers who have crossed over into a place where humans should not tread. A cursory glance at his work at large would lend itself to the idea that death holds no meaning in the eyes of Suda51. For one of the first times, however, we get to see the perspective of one whose work resides on the other side of the line. Those who have not forsaken their humanity entirely. Those who maintain a semblance of spirituality and compassion. Typical Suda51 characters like Travis Touchdown forged their identity through an insatiable bloodlust and love for killing, all while still chasing that ever-elusive high that comes with it. In stark contrast to this, Wataru's journey as an undertaker is one devoted to honoring the dead and recognizing the value of life, rather than ending it. In his eyes, there is no glorifying the premature end of one's life under any circumstances. Perhaps as a means of reflecting on his own feelings, or as a vehicle to explore a different perspective that often gets overlooked in his work, this different side of Suda gives us something new, while also sampling many flavors of the same. The challenges and hardships that befall Wataru in his journey test him as a human being, and through these hardships, a bizarre series of resolutions and revelations are attained. A large part of why Kurayami Dance works well rests on the back of its chosen format. There is much to be said about manga as a medium that is uniquely successful in communicating movement, concepts, and dialogue in a way that is both static, yet dynamic at the same time. Kurayami Dance lends itself well to this format, and often makes me wonder in what way it would have been adapted to a video game, had Shadows of the Damned not ultimately come out of the original concept. Despite this, I find myself quite thankful the work is confined to the pages of a manga. The paneling and line work are both superb, and the different ways the characters are presented from numerous perspectives and distances fully illuminate the numerous elements of a scene without overwhelming the senses. I recognize that I may sound a bit dramatic in saying all this, but I cannot stress how incredibly satisfying this story is to read as a manga. Surrealism is the status quo in Suda51 projects, but in this particular format, especially with the art style Takeya brings to the table, the experience is sublime. The line work is clean and firm, with no signs of compromise or wasted effort. Despite its simplicity, the shapes and strokes on each panel excellently communicate the situation without any excess. Everything feels precisely as elaborate or simple as it ought to. A creator whose legacy lies atop the shoulders of one particular medium can often find themselves hard-pressed to make any headway in the pursuit of another. That is not the case with Kurayami Dance. The work itself is a firmly cemented piece of the greater Suda51 meta-narrative, with no shortage of references and cameos to his other works and favorite media. Its themes lend themselves well to providing a new perspective to the work of Goichi Suda. It's every bit as punk as one might expect from the veteran author, and with a perfectly bite-sized duration of just 2 sweet volumes, it does not overstay its welcome in the least. This work is a solid piece of literature and a wonderful manga. Indulge yourself just a little and give it a try. For those in a hurry to live, it can be easy to overlook the little things. Do yourself a small favor and slow down just enough to check out Kurayami Dance.